Right, thank you for staying with us. One of the most piercing problems Nigeria faces is insecurity, which not just affects the citizens, but the growth and development of the country. But our hope is not lost as security officials continue to make arrests of persons causing violence in the country. Just recently, the Nigerian Defense Headquarters arrested a leader of Islamic State for West Africa Province, ISWAP terrorist group. The statement was made by the Director of Defense Media Operations, Major General Edward Buba, who also said the arrest of the ISWAP leader was part of troops' effort at, quote, targeting the leadership of terrorist groups to ensure they pose no further threat to the safety and security of citizens, end quote. He further said ongoing military operations across the country have continued to decimate the fighting force of terrorists and other criminal elements and reduce their fighting capacity. Joining us in the studio is a certified master anti-terrorism specialist, Dixon Osaje. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Now, some would say this is a welcome development.
Good news.
Good news, as it is. But how much impact would this really make? Because if you look at the statement coming from the Defense Headquarters, they're gunning for the leaders of this group because so as to ensure that lives and property perhaps are secured. Let me just summarize it that way.
Well, I said good news because most times we try to, engage terrorism from the surface. We don't look at the leaders, the sponsors, because terrorism is expensive, very expensive to delve into. I'm talking about the motivations, the financial implication of terrorism, and there is a multifaceted approach, if you ask me, if you want to engage in counter-insurgency. The military, are doing so well, and I'm really impressed with the collaboration they had with the DSS. The DSS is one of the most respected intelligence agencies we have in Nigeria, and I believe they have the capability to, collaborate with the military, to engage the military, service the military with intelligence-driven operations. Just like a few years ago when al-Baghdadi was eliminated by the U.S. troops, it demoralized the fighting force of the ISIS members in the Western world. So for me, if you go after leaders of terrorism, what you are doing is that you are dismantling the structure. Though they will try to, reappoint a new leader. But at that moment, when you hit on the leaders, you don't give them time to regroup. You have to go hard. I don't want the military to relax or the DSS to relax and, have some drink thinking they've done so well and terrorism is over. Terrorism is an ideological-driven war, and any ideological-driven war, Vera, I tell you, could last till eternity.
And we've seen the military also went on to say that these leaders, these ISWAP leaders and the likes have been on the run. They might have, considerably lessened due to the onslaught by the military. But an area of concern is that this particular case now, the leader was found in a state as Bauchi that, so to speak, has not, really suffered, unlike states in the northeast and the like. Yeah. There's also the renewed attention, so to speak, in Niger State, where a number of terrorist leaders have also been found. I just wonder how this will increase the war against terrorism, because these are states that are relatively safe, but now all of a sudden they are in the news for the wrong reasons. How will the military now ensure that this will not become hotbeds for terrorism, away from the attention on the Northeast?
Fantastic question, Kemi. You see, in terrorism management, if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. The military, for me, this war is not about the military. Counter-insurgency is not a one-way con. It's a multidimensional approach. The military has a role to play. Politicians has a role to play. The public has a role to play. The people has a role to play. Because if you ask me, why will a Nigerian want to put his life on the line for evil acts? Or why will anyone want to engage into terrorism? In exception of their ideological factors or their belief, many factors, comes to play. We're talking about the poverty factors, because sometimes that's where we need to start looking at parenting, sufficient parenting. Most of us that you see on air talking, or some people that are privileged not to dwell into crime, if you check the background, you find out that there is a sufficient parenting, you know, from father and mother or father, whatever the case may be, but sufficient parenting is very important here in our own climate. That's why sometimes if you think you want to just start engaging people in terrorist acts, killing them, you will keep on killing. That is not the foundational factors. What you need to do is to look at what's led to this act. What are the causative factors? Why are people, you know, delving into terrorism? I always say that, you know, a child on the street is a potential threat to the state, to the government. So we need to start looking at children on the street. We need to start looking at those that are not educated. Education plays a very big role. Unemployment as well plays a very big role, because suffering, when someone goes through suffering, I must tell you that suffering weakens the sense of reasoning. Most people that you know, have good reasoning about the Nigerian state, once they engage into suffering, or once they start suffering from maybe financial suffering or from social factors, you know, it weakens their sense of reasoning. So going back to the Bauchi and Niger State you're talking about that, you know, is springing up, you know, these states are, Niger State, for example, is one of the largest states in Nigeria. What's about 76,000 square kilometers? Let me say about 30 the size of Lagos State. So what people, state governors need to start looking at is, hey, it's happening in Maiduguri. How do we protect ourselves from this incident not happening? Most of our governors, you know, went to bed and just keep on, you know, putting eyes in the northeast, Maiduguri, Adamawa, and other states. They fail to plan, you know, for this imminent threat. You know, there's a quote by Cyril. It says, "When disasters strike, the time to plan has passed." So most times, what we are doing right now in most of our states is that we are planning after disaster. So it is will be fine if only we have a military approach, political approach as well.
But is there much state governors could have done, knowing that they do not control the security apparatus as it is? It is controlled from the center.
You see, why did they call themselves chief security officer then, if you ask me this question? For me, I don't believe state governors are chief security officers. I see that as an impersonation. That's from my own personal perspective. Security business is not for everyone. You understand? That's why people keep saying security is everyone's business. It's not everyone's business. It's everyone concerned, but not everyone's business. It's my business. It's not your business. Media is your business. So state governors, why I'm trying to call them to order, because they were elected into power to take care of the states. Are you with me? So that is where strategic planning comes to play, you know. If you don't have a strategic plan, because people just take out security plan when coming into power, you don't take out security plan. You need to put a security plan in place so that the people will not suffer from insecurity. Because let me tell you, if anyone or any person live in a state of fear, security has been defeated already, Vera. Security has been defeated. So for me, we need a political will to fight this spirit of terrorism. Sponsorship.
In pushing that conversation further, what do you think governors could have done, the state governors, and perhaps they could borrow a leaf from the statements you're making to ensure they secure their states, and it's not a matter of they failing to plan as it is?
If you go to the hospital, for example, the first thing the doctor do is to examine you, ask you what the problem is. You know, what state governors should be doing, first of all, is to carry out a risk assessment of their state, risk and vulnerability assessment of their state. You can't provide solution to what you don't know what the problem is. So when you carry out most of this assessment, what you need to also do is to check where this threat is coming from. Terrorism, for example, is a global crime. And people coming into terrorism now is being commercialized, you know. A lot of people just feel that, oh, we can make more money from terrorism, we can pick somebody. Kidnapping is also on the high rise as well, because most Nigerians cannot even travel from point A to point B without being accosted by criminal elements on our highways. So what state government needs to start is to, first of all, identify the problem. You can't provide solution without identifying the problem. When you identify the problem, then that is where we apply problem-oriented policing. You know, we see policing as just policing. Policing is strategic. Policing is multifaceted. So we need to start looking at problem-oriented policing. We need to start looking at situational crime prevention. Because one thing I will tell you is that these criminals, why they keep on flourishing, one is because our criminal justice system is also weak. You know, sometimes last week or so, I think there was a complaint from defense headquarters that some prisoners were released by, is it by the court or?
Yes,
No.
right, by the judiciary.
By the judiciary.
And then they talked about the correctional centers also, where they were saying that the those working there were also in collaboration with some of these
Very good.
forces to do
For the
something.
military to have come out to say such a thing, I think there's an irony of truth, because the military just come and speak or say anything. I'm once in the military, so I understand when they say something like that, they've gotten a very concrete information. So that tells you that our correctional facility needs to be visited. The president needs to overhaul our correctional facilities. Vera, most people that goes to the prison come out more hardened of a criminal. The essence of correctional facilities is to rehabilitate someone into the society. Then we accept such person, because the only sense of punishment is not to destroy, in exception of treasonable offense or whereby you are punished or sentenced to death by hanging. But most people go to the prison, come back more hardened. The guys that killed 3 police escorts and 3 staff of Apostle Johnson Suleiman were once in the prison. They were released because they said there was no facts. And when they came back from prison, they established a 10-man gang, and before you know it, they became a threat to society. So we need to start looking at our prison correctional facilities as well, to ensure that people don't go into prison, come back more hardened of a criminal.
Especially in the Nigerian setting, where at least 70% of the inmates are even awaiting
trial.
Are people who are awaiting trial. And in this case, now this latest arrest of an ISWAP leader, now naturally, the next big thing would be for them to do their investigation. Apparently, one would expect that they've done the investigation to narrow down on him. He's been arrested now, possibly transfer him or expectedly transfer him to, is it the police now, of these people, because that's still a standing problem, a long-standing problem. Do you also think that a special court for offenses as this will work?
I agree with you. It will work because, there's a normal, regular slogan that says justice delayed is justice denied, For me, I see justice delayed as a defeat on our judicial system because when you delay justice, you are depriving the victim of their rights. And that is where we talk about restorative justice. Right. We're not looking at restorative justice in our country. Restorative justice is all about ensuring the victims, are also well taken care of. It's not all about the criminal or all about the assailant or the person who was arrested or who has been arrested. We also start looking at the victimology. We need to talk about the victims as well, because some people come out damaged. Just for example, the Northeast issue. A lot of those victims have going through a lot of pain, psychological issues, emotional issues. Nothing is being addressed about that. So restorative justice must also come to play in this area of counterintelligence, whereby we ensure that victims of crime are well taken care of so that they don't also go into crime, because most times the reason why people commit crime, one is for financial reasons, two, also revenge. Some people want to revenge, say, hey, I was in XYZ location, I went through pain, the government didn't care about, you understand? So we should be looking at restorative justice. Then for me, I will also advise, we look at, special court for people like this. First of all, I wouldn't expect us to say, okay, let's charge him quickly to court. No. When you pose a threat to the Nigerian state, just like in the United States, for example, just what we call the Patriot Act, when you pose a threat to the Nigerian state, that is societal threat. You can pose a threat to Vera, you can pose a threat to Kemi, you can also pose a threat to me. But when you pose a threat to the society at large, that is societal threat now, your rights must be seized. That is how security is being managed. If you don't withhold the right of such person, the person will go to prison, come back, and be more deadly. So for me, if we establish a special court, victims, criminals like this, like the one that was arrested by the military and the DSS, taking the courts. But I will also advise them to, hold on a little bit, I don't know when he was arrested. Maybe it was last week or whatever the case may be. But I think people like that, when you pick them up, you don't need to rush to the media to inform the world that you've picked them up. Keep them. Use them to gain more intelligence, because most of his people, or maybe his financier, having known that, hey, this leader has been arrested, will want to deactivate every contact.
Could that be why they didn't disclose his name?
Perhaps. That is a very good strategy from the military and the DSS as well, because not disclosing his name, because I read the news on Punch newspaper. I was very impressed when I discovered that the name was not disclosed, because most people were looking at, can you mention and shame? No, it's not about mentioning and shaming.
Because that's what we have been talking about for some time now, name and shame these people.
Yes, name and shame comes at the end of investigation. You understand? Because you don't name and shame at the beginning of investigation. Investigation You know, you carry out investigation in stages. You have the preliminary investigation, you have the follow-up investigation, you understand, before the conclusive end. So if you just pick up somebody and start naming and shaming, you will not be able to use that person to get more criminals or his gangsters or his criminal enterprise. So for me, I think that strategy by the DSS and the military is a very good one, and I give them an applause for that.
Right, interesting. So let's also perhaps look closely at this matter of justice. From what you have said, does it mean that we are just treating the symptoms, we are not really going down to the roots to addressing this issue? Because you have talked about victims getting closure. Over the years, we have seen the military, you know, say they are rehabilitating these persons who they captured, for instance, Boko Haram, fighters, so to speak, who they get, and they say they have rehabilitated this person, they are reintegrating them back into the society. Victims see these people and they are wondering, what is government really doing with regards to this matter? So it means we are not doing well
we're not doing
that
well,
aspect.
Vera. I agree with you. Fantastic question. You see, that was where I talk about restorative justice. I personally, I could count more than 20 to 30 soldiers I know personally that were killed by these people, this criminal element. I will put a biro and paper and write down their names, more than 30. Now, their wives are now widows. Their children are orphans, fatherless. And if a fatherless child tune into TVC, for example, and see that those who killed their father or their parents, because I saw one of the videos, some of them were eating fresh bread, sardine, they're eating so well. What our soldiers were not even eating in the front line. I see these guys eating, the killers of our soldiers. I am not against reintegration. I am not against rehabilitation. But when it comes to terrorism, reintegration and rehabilitation and reintegration is very, very sensitive in the sense that terrorism is an ideological driven war.
So what should the government do?
So what should the government do is that before you reintegrate and rehabilitate, those people must be punished. You must be punished for your crime. You see, if you don't punish people for crime, crime flourish. And that's why punishment and shaming comes to play as well. Because people who commit crime, oh yes, I've repented of my evil ways. No. Because you don't have a sensor to check the heart of that person, if truly is repented, because it could be a decoy for him to, escape, effective punishment or sentence by the state government. So what the government needs to do, before you reintegrate, you rehabilitate and reintegrate people into the society, what you need to do, they must be punished.
What should that be?
Imprisonment, for example, is part of punishment. Imprisonment with hard labor is punishment. 5 years, 10 years. And during this process, there should be, I think I will also advise, we should start looking at having special correctional facilities so that these guys don't go into our correctional facilities and become preachers of terrorism. Because most times when you arrest them, they go into the prison services and become preachers of terrorism. And for example, you live there 10 years, those that are coming out of prison, becomes terrorists as well. So if you have an effective punishment mechanism in place to ensure that those who commit crime against the Nigerian state are punished, then I tell you, the spate of criminality will be mitigated. But if you don't punish them, you know what happened to the minds of other people? You say, well, when Dixon committed a crime, he was forgiven. Guy, just let's organize a group. Nigerian government is vulnerable. After 3-4 years, we'll put the Nigerian state at risk, put the Nigerian people in a state of fear. Government will call for us for a negotiation. They will pay us billions of naira. And that is why I'm also against an incident where government will start sending money or giving money to most of these criminal elements and saying that, oh, we're trying to... No. You don't play with the devil. Playing with the devil, you're playing with fire, because each time you negotiate with criminals, you are negotiating with the devil. And I tell you that the social factors and the emotional repercussion will be more deadly, because they themselves, what was the reason why they go into terrorism? Wickedness.
Another issue about what could have been the reason why people are going into terrorism.
All right.
While we are saying sympathizers, so to speak. This man arrested one would assume that he wasn't arrested in the forest. He was arrested living among locals.
Okay.
And ISWAP, the ISWAP ideology, analysts have said government also needs to, while you are doing the military arm of, tackling them militarily, you also need to look at the social factors behind it, because my question basically is, how do you displace ISWAP, for example, a breakaway faction from Boko Haram, and they've said that unlike Boko Haram, ISWAP protects the people. The people know them. The people know that they are ISWAP terrorists. The people see them as the only government they know. And so government may also need to look in that direction to be able to displace them totally beyond the surface. There's also need for government to also do the needful in terms of, having a friendly face, so to speak. Let the people know that you are government and these people are terrorists. They are not really after your good. What do you look at all those, bigger issues that more or less feels terrorism?
I just pray the government are listening to these questions, beautiful questions that needs to be looked into. Most of our people, some of them, have lost faith in our security agents because 2 years ago, Boko Haram went to a community and killed almost everybody, claiming that they were a source of intelligence to the military, that they were passing information to the police and they were passing information to the farmers, thank you, that they were passing information. Now, how do you expect these people to trust the government? That is another big issue we need to start looking about. And that is why the military and the police needs to come back home and reassess themselves. Find out those bad eggs within the system that are, selling out information to these terrorists that hurts our people. Because once the people lose hope in the military, intelligence-wise, lose hope in our security agents and DSS intelligence-wise, I tell you, there's going to be a big problem. Now, talking about the community and the criminal elements living together, there are various factors or methodology you use in eliminating terrorism. The military and our security agent needs to start looking at delinking, the resourcing, and demobilizing these terrorists. You need to delink them. What happened now? The arrest of the ISWAP leader is one of the delinking methodology the military has carried out. And it's going to work effectively because now there will be no link between the leader and the followers. And once the followers lose the link that connects them to their leaders and financier, I tell you that the spate of terrorism will depreciate. So they need to start looking at the linking methodology. Then the resourcing is also very important. Because where did they get the resources from? How did they get the money to finance this kidnapping? How much do you think it costs to buy a Kalashnikov, a general multipurpose machine gun? Do you know, it's very expensive to get this arms and ammunition.
And they have this.
And they have it at their hands. So looking at the leader is not sufficient. Let's look at the financier. In the last NSAS incident project, the CBN, quickly cuts those that financed the NSAS project. Yeah. Now, we need to start looking at banking factors. How would they help in getting the financiers of terrorism? So if we look into the link methodology, the resourcing methodology, and demobilization methodology in this war, bringing in the military component, the social component, and the societal component, political component, terrorism will be mitigated. But I will not come here to tell you that we will be able to eliminate terrorism, because crime, the truth is, crime will live with us till eternity. We will live with crime. But the factors we're looking at is how to reduce this crime. Nigeria is not having a good name in the international community. Every day I will get a call from outside the world. What's happening in your country? What's happening? Are you telling me your guys cannot kick off this ASS? I say, I'm sorry, they are doing so well. So for me, I think the military have done so well, the police have done so well, because for you to put your life on the line, and our soldiers must be appreciated, Vera. I woke up this morning, once it's 5 o'clock or 5 a.m., 4 a.m., you start feeling, the sleep becomes so sweet, I said, oh my God, alarm, TVC this morning, and I'm coming all the way from Chevron. So I said, 5 o'clock I'm awake. But why am I asleep? Some soldiers are in the battlefield awake, pursuing the enemies they never created, pursuing the people the people causing problems to this country they never created. Because no soldier creates enemy. Enmity comes from the political angle, then the soldiers go to dismiss it. So that is why from the political perspective, our politicians must also remember that none of them will live till eternity.
I'm sure there are those who would want you to expatiate on that statement you just made.
What statement is
enemies are created from the political angle.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So expatiate on that. How do you mean?
Okay, for example, there was a coup in African country. Yeah. And, you voted the president into power. The military came and fetched him out. Are you with me? Then you want to send some soldiers to go and fetch out that military. Those soldiers you are sending there, they didn't create that problem. You understand? They didn't create that problem. So that is why politics is a very sensitive angle. Because if
But these ones are terrorists.
You say what?
These ones are terrorists that we are talking about.
How were they founded? They were political motivated.
Ideology.
It is an ideology-driven component. So when you look at these issues from political angle, every problem in a society is political. Are you with me? It's political. So sometimes the reason why they strive could be due to social factors.
Right.
You know, if we have good education mechanism, unemployment mitigated to as low as reasonably acceptable, we don't have high turnout of unemployment. Then there was a recent flood is in the Benue State that Nigerians were displaced in their own country.
Right.
Yeah, you know, you see, when we look at disaster, you could talk about natural disaster, you could talk about man-made disaster, and you could talk about inadvertent disaster. Natural disaster is caused by God. It's natural, you know. We can't do anything about it. Man-made disaster is what is the problem of Nigeria today. Terrorism is man-made disaster.
Right.
Most countries are working so hard to curtail with man-made natural disaster. But here, we are fighting so hard to curtail with man-made disaster.
So how should the military move on from here now that they have him in their custody? Because earlier you mentioned that you wouldn't want them to prosecute him as quickly as possible. They should take their time, get information. Yeah. So how should they move on from here? Yeah,
moving on from here, I think they need to have an effective collaboration with the security agency, the police, the DSS, for intelligence purposes, you know. The military, as like I rightly said, have done so well. So what they should be doing as right now is to, like I mentioned, 3 factors to delink the resource. Now, start looking for the financial, those financing terrorism. Look out for their financier. Because if you cut off...
They have the capacity to do that.
Yes, the military has the capacity to do that. Because, Vera, money, we're talking about cash and money here. They have the capability to do that. Even if they don't, the DSS has the capability. I am very sure they have the capability to do that. If we can do it during the NSAS period, we can still do it during this time of terrorism. Look into the banking factors. Look at, because fighting terrorism, you have to look at the placement.
We've been talking about it for a long time. Look into the banking sector. We've been talking about even NIN, BVN. How is it that we can't still trace this?
Then there's a compromise somewhere, because security is achievable, like I rightly said.
All right.
Very, very achievable.
We'll leave the conversation here now. Yeah. Dixon Osaje, Certified Master Anti-Terrorism Specialist. Thank you for your time on the
Thank you, Vera.
Thank you.